are moving slowly but surely.
Yeah, yeah, and you're at the end. I mean, we are dragging ourselves out of winter slowly, but you're midsummer, heading to your autumn, but the heat is slowly turning up. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So usually February is a very hot month, but it seems like it's still going to get even hotter as February comes. So the grapes look a bit more or less a week or two later than normal, but I think with this heat, it's going to catch up quickly onto us again.
For sure, yeah, worth keeping an eye on before picking dates. But well, we are live on Facebook, live on Zoom. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Live on Facebook and most likely live on Instagram as well. I would start by apologizing for the tardy delay for kicking off. There's a bit of technical issues with the laptop. I bust my head open on the weekend in a laptop-related incident, but all is well. And now we're going live through the phone. And Reenen, isn't it amazing that we can connect from the other side of the planet, despite everything that is thrown in front of us? But so welcome everyone up and down the UK and over in Northern Ireland. And please let us know where you are and what you're drinking. And hopefully some of Reenen's wines. All of them are on live on the site actually. So if you don't have them, you can, by the time we go through each of the wines this evening, you might decide to add one or two to basket, but that's up to you purely. So what we'll do is, I wouldn't mind, Reenen, just getting a catch up. Things are berserk all over the world, or let's say bizarre all over the world. But in South Africa, you guys have an extra level of complexity, which us in the UK sitting here happily drinking wine, i.e. alcohol, don't have the same situation as you have. What kind of complications do you have in South Africa at the moment?
So it's quite strange that South Africa actually banned any alcohol at all. So there's no alcohol related products. It's legal to be sold, and it's a strange situation to be in, to be honest. I mean, it's affecting so many businesses and so many businesses related to alcohol businesses, wine industries, beers industries. I mean, small breweries. Wine growers, product suppliers. And I think it's just something so new to us. Nobody prepared for this. So we're sitting in quite a dire situation where there's a full lockdown on alcohol, and there's a curfew where even with alcohol, people can't actually support the hospitality industry. It's like a double whammy here in South Africa, and the people are really feeling it, especially now with the second lockdown. So we had an alcohol ban last year this time, and I think everybody's had a little bit of reserves to pull through there. And now with the second one, with this second wave of COVID, the businesses are really struggling, and we're seeing the effects visually here in South Africa.
Mm. And we were talking recently. You were talking about taking a stroll through beautiful Stellenbosch, and it's such a picturesque, in a sense, kind of town, like a settlement town. The bookshops closed up, and I mean, we're seeing something similar in the UK. But I think this extra level of, for us, everyone who's attending this evening are wine lovers, and they're invested in, your fortune and how you do. And I think the fact that there's this extra sort of barrier or obstacle to your success when everyone's playing by the rules and doing the right thing, it's just this extra hurdle which has a greater economic effect. But we acknowledge it, and hopefully there's something that Naked, and I reached out to you today and a few other winemakers in South Africa to see what can we do about this. So we'll catch up, I think, on Thursday and sort of thrash out what there is for Naked to do with the Naked winemakers in South Africa. So what we're going to do this evening, Reenen, is we're going to taste through your three wines, your Cabernet Merlot, Syrah, and the conclusion. Then we'll take a wee break. I'm going to show, not a toilet break, a small break, and I'm going to show you some of the wines I've been tasting this week, what we call Ray's Empties. And then we'll come back and we're going to talk about Montagu, which is a region that you are amongst the early pioneers of finding this region off the beaten track in the back bush of South Africa, and the type of white wine that comes from there that some people have bought. And we'll have a talk about that and see what else there's more to do there. So, okay, everyone's telling us what they're drinking in their glass. I'm going to kick off by drinking or tasting your Cabernet Merlot, which actually I think is your highest rated from the case that we released. So to remind everyone, it was May, June, July, and it was Eamon who kicked off the COVID Rescue Fund, $5 million COVID Rescue Fund, where we had people from around the world, winemakers from around the world, who might typically sell to the on-trade, the restaurants in their country, and all of that had closed up. And so you angels who are watching jumped in and supported and put your money where your mouth is and helped those folk out. And we brought on some very talented winemakers. We were very lucky. We've had Rafa and Nuria on here before, and there'll be many more. But Reenen is honestly one of the top talents in South Africa. And I met you, Reenen, in South Africa, Cape Wine 2015. And that was a good moment. Yeah. It wasn't a good day for South Africa, actually. You were just beaten, or you were going to be beaten by Japan. But that aside, it was a good day. That was the Rugby World Cup. But yeah, no, that was cool. So back then, 2015, 6 years ago, where was Boschkloof and what was it doing?
So that was probably, yes, I've just probably taken winemaking over from my father for about 3 years then. And still finding my feet and doing a few new things. I was quite new on the wine scene, almost in the industry, making a few wines that stood out and people starting to enjoy, but still finding myself, if I can put it like that. And we actually had a good conversation about that, and started to Boschkloof is always going to be my biggest focus, but that was the year I think that you tasted the first wines I made out of Montagu. So that was the early stages of me figuring out what I wanted to do and with what grapes I wanted to work with, and besides the family estate. So I always had this passion for our Boschkloof farm, but I always had the desire to explore and to work with other grapes and unknown areas, and even if not making wine to sell, just to broaden my knowledge a bit and to do experiments and besides doing the normal wines that we make here on Boschkloof from our own vineyards.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was quite nice. I remember vividly meeting you, Ray, and yeah, and so that I can't believe it's 5 years back.
But I actually can't believe that, for want of a better expression, that naked landed you, that we got you, because I remember it was Richard Siddle, a wine writer. He just saying, "Here, Ray, come and have a look at this." And I tasted it, and I was like, bloody hell, that is amazing. It was your epilogue as well, I think. And Tim Atkin, a wine writer, master of wine, then there shortly after announced you as like his winemaker, upcoming star of the year. And it was just one of those things, a total revelation, the quality of the wines, consistency. And I don't know, it was put to bed for the while, and then it was COVID that brought it back. And we will take these blessings in disguise, thank you very much, because there aren't enough of them going. So we, when you applied for the COVID fund, Eamon and I tasted them. He was in Dublin, I'm in Marlow in the UK, in Buckinghamshire, and it was just like, yes. Yes, we just felt like, okay, hurry up and let's do this.
I remember you guys, because lucky for me, we were still in contact through all these years, just catching up here and there. So it I didn't feel uneasy telling you guys, listen, I've got some wine for this COVID fund.
Yeah.
you want to have a check? Do you want to check it out, please?
Yeah, exactly, indeed. Because the Montagu white, which we're going to come at this, we're going to do the reds first in the roundabout way, and we'll do the white in the second half after 30 minutes. But we'll that is a 2020 wine, so we had already sort of dipped our toe in the water early 2020, pre-COVID. I mean, you picked it pre-pandemic pretty much, and then we were just sort of sussing it out, and then the fact, this brought it all to fruition, and we are the fortunate ones. Naked and the Angels are the fortunate ones. So and we will come into it in bits and pieces as we go through these reds, but I think let's start tasting the Cabernet and the Merlot. But your father is a bit of a legend, as you are and will be, continue to be. But Jacques Borman is the Cape Wine Masters Guild, is that right?
Yeah, so my father used to be the winemaker for over 20 years for very big wine and fancy wine cellar called La Motte and Rupert and Rothschild. He used to be the wine director for them as well. And I think like any serious winemaker, he wanted to start his own brand and make his own family wines. And that's where in 1995 he broke off from the more corporate winemaking industry and focused on something small here in Stellenbosch. So he's also got a very good reputation with cultivars like Syrah. And I think he went and scouted for specific soils in this area that can make good Cab and Syrah, etc. And I'm lucky to have followed in his footsteps. To be honest, he was, I mean, obviously my greatest mentor till now. Till now, I've starting to feel my own, follow my own gut and start making my own wines. But I mean, everything I know, I learned from him.
That's great. I mean, I'm too fortunate, and it's humble to acknowledge, the heritage, and it's kudos to him, and he's been recognized. Just tell us briefly about the Cape Wine Masters Guild. This is
so the Cape Winemakers Guild started probably about 30 early 30 something years ago, and it was just a group of winemakers that wanted to form like a I don't know what the guild, obviously, where they can put some limelight on the quality of South African wines. But in the years to follow, the only way that you can become a member is if you've made wines of a certain caliber and quality, and then you get nominated. And if the guild members accept that you've been making wines of high quality for numerous years, then you get accepted into this Winemakers Guild program. And then these winemakers make very small batches of wine that they only sell on auction. And with this, they try to obviously improve the image of South African wine with the prices they get and the quality they make, but they also try and give back to the less fortunate from the earnings of these auctions. So it's an unbelievable thing that I think in the years to come can even grow much bigger.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, he's a very talented winemaker, and you've clearly picked up the knack. So, and we have the wines in front of us. So let's do taking on board. Thank you for those that who attended the virtual tasting tour last, was that September or October? And then we asked you what you liked and what you'd like to hear more. And one sort of thread that we picked up was a bit more on the educational piece. So in that sense, we're going to go through these three wines and allow ourselves to be a little bit geeky, but we're not going to go too deep, and just get some of what we should be looking for, what we can taste, and we'll cruise through them like two good mates tasting wines, and anyone who wants to contribute. And then there's the Q&A down below. The chat is for, let's say, the banter and the exchange of everyone around the country sharing, as this is a community and we're very lucky to have all of each other, certainly now. And the Q&A, you can throw in questions which Reenen has volunteered to present at the end. And I'll be taking the last 10 minutes off. Thank you very much. Okay, looking forward to that. So we will kick off, only joking. We'll kick off with this the Cab Merlot. And as we're pouring it and getting into it, we're going to throw up, Dominique, if you don't mind throwing up a poll. We've got, I wouldn't mind putting out a question to everybody. Those who have bought Reenen's COVID rescue case, what was your favorite wine from that case? And you'll see the 4 options on the screen in front of you. The wine that is omitted there is the Boschkloof Conclusion, which is the top wine, which is very, very good. But noticing, I had a quick look on the ratings and the comments on the page, and everyone loved the wine, but there aren't so many who maybe have indulged in it yet. So we've chosen to remove that from this poll, and the Montagu White, which only went out recently and only a few of you will have tasted. So based on these 4 reds, please let us know which was your favorite. And while we're doing that, I've topped up myself, and I'm going to have a little tasty taste, and then we'll reveal the favorites. Okay, I'm going to take that off the screen so I can see this. And although, wow, closer than close on a close day to the close sun. That's fantastic. Wow. And actually, so Reenen, I don't know, can you see that as it popped up on your screen?
It's just popped up here. So I tried to vote for the Syrah, but they said the host can't vote as well. Or the
Yo, you tried to vote for your Syrah.
Yeah. just to get the ratings up, but I see it wasn't necessary.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting because I was tasting the wines earlier and looking at the wines on the page, on the site, on your winemaker profile. The Syrah, I think, is 85% buy it again rating, whereas the Cab Merlot, which is the first wine we'll taste, is 92% rating, I think. And to see the Syrah win this evening, yeah, it's for diehards. Okay, so cool. We'll enjoy talking about those individually as we go through them. So let's kick off, Reenen, if you don't mind, the Cab Merlot 2019. I guess if I could sort of frame it and you could explain it, your wines are, or let's say there's a general anecdote about South Africa and South African reds, is that they sit somewhere between the old world, France, Europe, and the new world, Australia, USA. Okay, so, and that's a sort of like thrown about phrase quite a lot. But in your wines, there is really a marriage of the two here. And so can you tell us what we're seeing from one world and the other world, and what we're tasting, please?
For me, what you're explaining there, Ray, actually shows for me the best in this wine. The marriage between the old world and the new world, especially in the Cab Merlot. When I work with these grapes, what I find is it's to get that marriage, it's quite site specific. We work with a lot of granite here in the Polka Drive Stellenbosch, and that automatically and naturally gives a bit of structure and a bit of freshness, that almost that wet gravelness to the wines, that takes you a bit to the old world, that we can't replicate in the cellar. And then obviously the African sun and the fruity aromas that we've got with the climate here just adds that bit of luscious fruit that the New World has. And I think the Cab Merlot is actually one of the wines that shows that the most, where you get a bit of that almost claret-like dustiness, yeah. And then there's a pop of fruit and almost Moorishness coming through as well, and that's what I'm trying to replicate with this wine, is let the terroir and the soil do its thing with the old world part, and then I can add a bit of that fruit forwardness that we get from this quite warm weather.
Yeah, that sums it up perfectly, as you say, the little graveliness. So if that's a word, but it's that light chalkiness, so it sort of grips the tongue slightly, but it isn't drying tannins, which sometimes sit inside your top gum. It's when you get a chalky, I used to describe it as powder gun tannin, like talc tannin, like that, which you see in the right bank of Bordeaux, going a little bit geeky. But that's what you have from your soil there. And but it's the balance that you make. I mean, the thread that I saw, I tasted these three wines a little earlier, and I wrote a couple of notes, just like how how they speak to me or whatever. And in the end, at the top of the page, I just wrote elegance, and that sounds very poncy, and it's like I walk around and quoting Latin at home. And but it's just that there was something that was like, okay, there's a thread here. And Brewer Rotz, he and his Cab Franc, Malbec, they keep this sort of subtle, pure line, somewhat again the chalkiness, and then on the other side, Johan, your good friend, he has different expressions in his wines, his Mateo and his elements. They have a bit more punch in them and rightness in them. But yours, they have this consistent thread of elegance. And for me, it is just outstanding quality winemaking and sight, and which is why I'm extremely happy to have you indoors rather than outdoors. Really top quality kit. And yeah, so that's it. There's a thread of elegance that you manage to, as you said, reflect the soil, and then you just sort of like execute it, deliver it in a nice sort of round, approachable way.
And I think a big thing is most South Africans, especially the younger generation winemakers, we're trying to tone down the South African wines a little bit more as well. So usually when a few years back, the winemakers picked the grapes quite rough, quite late, and worked it quite rough and hard. So that force of almost flavors and tannin and extraction, you couldn't pick up the dust, the almost chalkiness and the terroir bit. So toning that down immediately, let the terroir speak a bit more, and then obviously the fruit isn't as rum and raisiny, so you get this more pleasureness in the drinking experience. So I think toning it down, not per se into a new wave, a very light, thin and watery, fruity style of wine, but just steadily toning it down and letting the wine be a bit more balanced and harmonized. I think that is a big approach that we should focus on here in South Africa. Yeah.
Well, you said it, balanced and harmonized. That I pretty much, and elegance sums up your range. And it is, I mean, I say it, I'm very fortunate to taste quite a lot of wines all the time, especially from South Africa. And you have a USP, a unique selling point in that balance and harmony. So let's go on to the Syrah, and then we will taste the conclusion, and then we'll go and look some other wines. So the Syrah, which is the same grape, for just to remind everyone, as Shiraz, which you see in Australia. It's home in France, in the North Rhone, actually in the Swiss Alps, but not too far. And again, Reenen, yours is, you could have, in fact, there are wines in South Africa which are labeled Shiraz, and there are wines in South Africa that are labeled Syrah. And would I be right in thinking that it is more a nod to the style and where you're going? Is if you're Syrah, you're sort of Northern Rhone, Francophile, French style, and if you're Shiraz, you're like, let's go, right, barbecue here. Yeah, cool. And so, and one other observation, which just to share with everyone, and then I'd love to hear your sort of, for you to talk us through this wine, what we're seeing, what we're tasting. But when Eamon and I were with you and your dad, listening to Neil Young, in the cellar, and then I was playing him, Neil Young, because I had just seen him in was it Hyde Park, July the year before, and I had live video. So we were listening to Neil Young, having a good little Neil Young rock out. But then you showed us your cellar, and in your cellar you have lots of very fine wine, but you have this philosophy, I believe, of to make fine wine, you have to drink fine wine. So you
exactly, yeah.
Tell us your philosophy on that a bit more, please.
I think you can't make world-class wine if you don't constantly consume it. And I don't mean drinking very expensive wine all the time, but at least drinking wines that you don't make yourself most of the time, and trying to figure out what other people are doing in other countries, and how they approach their grapes, and trying to learn from that, and then drinking the premium offerings in the world as well, to try and benchmark what we are doing, and not trying to replicate it, but seeing what we give on what I can give on the same quality bracket. And that comes through, I think, definitely through tasting experience and traveling, and being open-minded towards styles and cultivars and what they can offer, and then approaching it differently in the cellar to try and get what you're after, and not make say a recipe wine year in year out, per se. Yeah.
And did you make wines for example, or where did you make wines around the world?
I've only made wine, physically made wine overseas once, and that was in the Rhone Valley in France, by coincidence. So I stayed there for about 5 months, but then I came immediately back home to start helping my father on the farm. And while a lot of my friends were still traveling for another couple of years, I had to start grind on the family farm. But now I feel that was quite almost positive, because I've started to learn the grapes earlier than I thought I was going to do, and work with the same grapes for 10 years now. And now only I'm starting to realize find my feet and where I want to go quality wise.
Yeah, well, do you know, Reenen, it's just come to me. Okay, given nobody's going anywhere soon for a long time, but you know, what the naked community of angels, but also the naked community of winemakers brings is, I mean, I can't wait for you to meet them all. But we'll soon get on the road at some point. But you know, there's a great opportunity for you there to come and work with individual winemakers in different countries, alongside naked winemakers. I mean, going back to the North Rhone, you may be, or I guess you're the North Rhone because you're talking Syrah. You could go to the South Rhone, work with Denny Crespo. In the Languedoc, you have Benjamin Darnaud, and then to pick another country, Australia, you've got Sam Plunkett making his Shiraz. And it's just there's so much opportunity for collaboration, and Naked would love to be a part of it, support it, and Angels, I'm sure, would love to jump on and follow your journey through that. So we are one pandemic away from that happening. But when things change, you know, you tell us where, because I just can really absolutely see the inspiration from the North Rhone, which is appellations like Cornas, Côte Rôtie, Saint Joseph, Creux Hermitage. Those are French appellations in the North Rhone, with the home of Syrah. And I can taste it now in this wine. So basically, you would have our backing for you to go forth. And so let's come back to that.
If these borders open up, you don't have to ask me twice to go do a collaboration in France. Believe me.
Good stuff. Yeah. And it can be Bordeaux as well. We got Olivier Cazeneuve over there as well. So there's a community. This is a family of winemakers. It's a family of angels. It's a massive community. So cool. Long may that come. So let's take this Syrah quickly, and I'll tell you what. I'll kick off and give my thoughts on it for the angels who are watching, and then you can sort of back me up or slate me down. So when I tasted it earlier, I thought it had quite a bit of black pepper, which is a component of Syrah, and specifically a component of Syrah in the North Rhone. It's a Rotondon is the name of the compound. And it's not a character that a lot of people like. It can be a bit too overpowering, that crushed black pepper character. And I was like, oh, okay, that's why it's 85% rating, fair enough. But now that I taste it, so this is about an hour and a half later, it's far more Parma violet, it's far more aromatic, and it's perfumed. And then again on the palate, it's silky and elegant and smooth. So I guess with each of these wines, they need to just open up a little bit. Would that be right?
No, definitely, because I work quite reductive in the cellar because we don't have a very fancy advanced technology approach to making wine. So I just try to do the basics as reductive as I can to try and almost get the wines to be as protective as possible in the cellar, and to get the wines as almost primary as possible in the bottle. So then you capture all those youthful flavors and perfume as well. And you can lose that quite easily in the cellar if you overage the wines and leave them in old barrels for too long. And I'm not quite a big fan about. I'll rather bottle age it after capturing all those magnificent and almost enticing aromatics. And so my approach with Syrah is especially that, calling it Syrah and trying to tell people that I'm not trying to influence the wine with too much oak influence. I'm trying to capture the perfume of the grape, because Syrah is such a wonderful grape, even in its youth in the cellar. If you start fermenting it, the whole cellar starts smelling like flowers and violets, and it's also a vineyard that if you do some vineyard management, it shows it immediately. So it's quite a responsive grape and vineyard to work with that I found quite seductive to work with. Where with Cabernet, it's you have to wait for the long haul. It's got sturdy tannins. It's a lot more hardy vineyard, so you don't always see the results immediately. You have to be patient. So I think the romantic side of Syrah captured me with the violets and the elegance and the herbiness and obviously the massive amount of styles you can try and make it in or enjoy it in, drinking pleasures it gives. So I'm trying to capture that, because we've got this granite soils that produce that almost inky, violety perfume, and then obviously those coated, as you called it, that velvety tannins. It's such a joy to drink them as well.
Yeah, and it's showing perfectly at the moment. So you could drink it now. I'm sure you can age it some more time, but it's lovely. In any case, I would open it 30 minutes beforehand. So what we will do is we will jump into the conclusion, which is the final one of the res we have open, because then I'm very keen to talk to everyone about Montagu, which is your project up in the nether regions of South Africa. So a quick comment on this for those who may have not opened it yet and they're saving it for a special occasion. How is it tasting now? What will it look like in 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years, for example? And what is it? What's the blend, please?
So to give you guys an idea of the conclusion, that's actually my favorite wine to make in the cellar, because it's a farm blend. So I've tried not to put this wine into a box or a certain bracket of blending. Every year I take the best barrels in the cellar, whatever cultivar they may be, and I try to figure out what's the best wine I can make from them. So usually most years it's a Cab Franc based, and some years it's only Bordeaux cultivars with Cab and Merlot in the mix. But some years when I've got special Syrah in the cellar and it just adds towards the wine, I blend that in as well. So for me, it's quite a fun wine to make, because it's I try to make it super premium and high quality, but also to represent everything we have on the farm, and not just do the old cliche blend. So this year, the 2018 conclusion, actually for the first time, has got a little bit of Syrah in again. I just added so much perfume to the wine in an almost inky way, and I just thought it rounded and balanced the wine off a bit. So I think the blend is mostly Cab Franc and Cab, that's majority, and then some Merlot and a little bit of Syrah as well. So it's just to represent what Boschkloof can do as a blend from our soil and from this farm.
And Reenen, what do you reckon? When should people drink it? It looks nice now, and what will it look like in 3 years and in 5 years?
So the wine is quite tight, but I try to make it as balanced as I can, but still give it great structure. So I think this wine can age at least. I think my drinking window for this wine, I'm a big rather say 2 years too early than a day too late type of wine drinker. So, but I mean, I think the drinking window for this wine will probably be between 5 and 8 years, where I'll enjoy it the most. So drinking wonderfully now, even better in 3 years, but I think in another 5 years, it's going to just give a different experience. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's great. We were very fortunate to pick it up. And I would just point out the slightly heavy bottle. You remember, Reenen, we had this conversation. I was like, that bottle's a bit heavy, and Naked is forming a sustainability approach, and we were slightly uncomfortable. So basically, heavier glass, greater weight in transport, more fuel, greater CO2 emissions. And without going too deep into that, we said we would like you to offset the CO2 emissions on this. And you jumped at it. You bit my hand off, actually. You were very enthusiastic. You were like, this is the best thing I've done this week. And so you sort of paid to plant trees. I think it was in Kenya. And that is a sort of that is not a resolve to climate change, but it was you had bought the glass for the 2017 and for the 2018, which we are drinking here, and so it's not a long-term solution to just offset by planting trees, but it's what we did. As in,
no, that was fantastic. It was a great idea from you, Ray, as well, because personally, I'm not also a big fan of heavyweight glass. I think it's still a very old mentality where people associate quality with the glass. I don't understand why, but so we've actually made that wine in that bottle, and then hopefully we'll move over to something less in the 2019 vintage.
Yeah, we're all sort of taking those steps. We're all taking those steps slowly but surely.
And even if it's small steps like those, a lot of us can't do the big steps, but we can still manage these small differences like that.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, well, I'm going to quickly just take you very quickly. This is going to be the quickest raise empties ever, and then we're going to come back and Reenen, if you tell us about Montagu, that'd be great. So I'm just going to show all of y'all some of the wines that I was tasting this week. And so there's 2 new wines here, which also came out of let me see, that would be great if I got the labels in the right direction. This is 2 new wines which will come on the site the next few days. The Kiss is from Tash Mooney in South Australia, who is a consultant, and her business was struggling as a result of the crisis last year. So she applied. It was Eamon who picked up with Tash and said, yeah, we can help you out. And so we've taken in some of her, so it's South Australia Shiraz and South Australia Chardonnay. So that will appear on the site shortly. What else? Oh, these 2. Well, Chateau Saint-Hilaire from Provence. It's absolutely delicious. So that's coming soon. And then for anyone there's 2 wines here from the Fine Wine Club. This is Provence Rosé from Chateau Saint-Hilaire, but it's a peg up. It's super premium, super lush. That will be in, well, I will break the spoiler. That will be June, the June Fine Wine Club, and it's crackerjack. You'll love it. 2 wines, as you know, from Marko Stojakovic in North Macedonia. And for those who enjoy Marco's wines, there's Grasshopper Rock for the die-hard fans. This is the 2017 vintage, which has just landed. And then finally, another one from Luca Hodgson is Blauer Portuguesa. You can't really tell much from that label, but this is a wine from Chile, from Luca Hodgson, who makes Sabatico and Telerico. I commissioned him, or I said, hey, look, here's the budget, go nuts. What would you like to make for the Fine Wine Club? And he proposed this Blauer Portuguesa, which is an unusual grape variety, and he's blended it with Grenache. And so that will be coming, is it at June or September? Anyway, you'll find out. So some exciting wines coming down the line and going live very soon. So look, Reenen, Montagu, what's the crackerjack? Where is it? What is it? How do we get there? Is there a bus?
So Montagu is quite a small town. They call it the gateway of the Karoo here in South Africa. So it's inland east. So that's before you get all the sheep farmers, but it's the mountain range before all those flatlands come in the Karoo. So it's a lot of mountains and valleys and a lot of interesting and secret almost spots that nobody knows about, and actually a lot of grapes grow there as well, because it's a rather high altitude, and the valleys obviously has fertile soils, so the people planted a lot of grapes. And but it's a region known for the grapes mostly to distill brandy with, so it's not a region where people make any serious or high quality wine from. Most bulk of the industry is high quantity grapes, low margins, low cost, and most of it is distilled, and it's just farmed very in a bulk fashion and machine harvested. So not a lot of, you can say, a fine wine approach to any of the wine there in Montagu, but there's so many spots with potential, and we've actually got into a valley called the Patatsfontein Valley, where it's not down in the riverbeds, it's up on top of the mountain, and the vineyards grow on these slate soils, and the vineyards are a little bit older, some of them still young. That's going to be beautiful one day, even more better than the old vineyards are now. And these wines just make, or these grapes just make amazing wines. The farmers, nobody believed us that the sites are special and the grapes are special, and I think we're starting to convince everybody through what we are putting into the glass that Montagu can actually make unbelievable wines. It's about 600 meters above sea level, but it gets so it's warm, very warm, warmer than Stellenbosch, but it gets extremely cold in the evening. So the grapes cool down dramatically. It's got very stony soils, so it's low fertile vines that struggle, and they just produce these absolute wonderful flavors that I hope the angels will taste soon enough.
Yeah, and so I mean, a number of them cases went out on a pre-order, and people have received them and are tasting them. And I'm fortunate to have a bottle here, and I'm tasting it. But I think it has a sort of like a glass-like purity. So where some wines you taste, like a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, and it's instantly pow, pow, pow. It just like kicks off, and it's exactly what you want. It's that sort of like instant vibrancy of passion fruit or grapefruit or whatever. And on the extreme opposite side, you've got Pinot Grigio, which is just that nice level of subtle fruitiness, and it sort of works away in the background. And Chardonnay, oaked or not. But yours here it stands out in its glacier freshness, purity, and then I guess the fruits are sort of like, it's like a fruit salad bowl. So there's some pear, there's some apple, and then potentially some sort of like low-level grape, pineapple. So it's not wholly exotic. It has a purity and a freshness to it. And is that does that come from the altitude, the day, night, diurnal temperature variation? So you get the fruit, but you get the cool and back and forth. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, that's because that's a big component for the grapes to start ripening evenly. If they can cool down, for the vineyards to almost rejuvenate and get energy for the next day's heat again. So otherwise the grapes and the vineyards go backwards as the season gets hotter, and not all the vineyards start to ripen evenly. And you don't want the sun to almost ripen your grapes. You want the vineyard to ripen them. So I think that's a tremendous attribute towards that pureness, and that because you get these grapes that are they all look the same, and when they get into the cellar, they're so pristine because of everything that's just perfect for the grapes, the conditions. And then obviously the soils just adds another dimension as well, because now it's the perfect conditions on top, but with struggling soils below. So that just adds a little bit of that almost salty mineral vibe to it, on top of that almost fruit salad, as you mentioned, that I just think works so well to make this wine something that's not the norm out there. So that I quite enjoy.
But the reality is, Reenen, is that what we're tasting, or what we have been fortunate enough to capture in the 2020 vintage, it was yourself, myself, it was yourself and Eamon. You and I sort of sparked a conversation way back when, but it was Eamon who sort of worked with you on capturing this 2020 vintage, which people have in bottle and it's on the site, but it's under significant threat, in a sense, you would say, as the area doesn't really, the profits don't yield enough return for the grape growers, and there's almond trees that would give greater yields and greater profits. So what's the lay of the land? What are things looking like in Montagu? Which, just tasting it, it's crack. It's exceptional. So what are the threats, and how can we get around it?
So yeah, I think to get around it is going to be tricky, but I think we have to start somewhere and to try and, or even if we can just make a difference slowly but surely. But the situation is quite dire in that area, because it's, even before COVID, it's quite a poor community, Montagu. There's a few touristy things going on, but the farmers are struggling. There's no added value to their products, because the sellers aren't exporting, or they don't make premium wines. It's only bulk. They don't get paid. There's some farmers get paid 3 years after their harvest in installments, monthly installments over 36 months. Can you believe? And if you're small, almost a farmer just trying to survive, that's not good enough for them to survive on grapes only. So they're slowly but surely starting to take out of the grapes and trying to plant less labor intensive products like almonds or nuts or commodities, and then just they can't, the big sellers, the power of the big sellers, they've got enough grapes to work with. So if a small farmer asks for more, they just say no, they can't pay more, and that's the end of the discussion. So there's no relationship between farmers and big sellers. Not all big sellers, but there are a few that's has misused their growers because due to their power. So you're seeing so many vineyards getting pulled out, especially vineyards like these that I work with, because their produce aren't sufficient enough. The quantities those vineyards give aren't 30 tons a hectare anymore. So if you don't get those quantities, they don't break even. The farmers don't break even with their vineyards. So we've tried to go and identify a few vineyards in that valley that I work with, and we're paying them more than 4 times that they used to get, and we're paying them 2 weeks after we received the last grapes. So I think and that's happening all over South Africa with the winemakers these days, the younger winemakers, they're trying to put acknowledgement onto the farmers and paying them a decent price for their grapes, and then and paying it in time for what suits the farmer as well. So I think as soon as that mentality slowly but surely creeps into the industry, it's going to do wonders.
I mean, is there something that maybe that everyone who's listening this evening and would like basically, whether they've tasted the wine or not, they would like to join the same philosophy? But let's take a step back, and perhaps in the next week or two we can send out a vote and ask people, should we commit and pay in advance, pay on time rather? It can be before you pick, just as you pick, but it sounds like an area that you know, it has massive potential. As you said, even there's the older vines, but there's the younger vines that are coming through that will one day, you know, even greater than the current older vines. So it's something, look, tasting this wine and seeing the potential that we locked in, fortunately, that we could see it from 2020. And now we're looking at 2021. It's up to anyone who's tasted it, if you have it already. Otherwise, it's on the site. You can have a taste. Or just if you're a Reenen lover, let us know. So in a week or two, we'll send out a vote, and you just let us know. Should we jump in? Should we join, let's say, this movement of this modernization or this new frontier, a new approach to turning over an old school form of viticulture or business wine economics in South Africa, which was less in favor of the wine grower, the wine maker, and more towards the sort of the capitalist or the sort of, well, you know, the institutional that ran these operations. I think it is one of the bright sparks of 2020, of which there are little or few, and we're just brilliant. It's brilliant to be on board with you, Reenen. And so look, we'll pick up on that again, and people will have a chance to vote whether we go along. But it just feels right, you know, having tasted it, it's testament to why this is blinking crackerjack. Someone I work with, Joe Gunn, a friend and colleague I worked with for a long time, she bought the 6-pack, and she says, you know, it tastes a little bit somewhat like Sauvignon Blanc, but you know, it's Chenin, and I like it, but it's a bit like Sauvignon Blanc. And I said, well, I'll taste it again. And I can see it when I was tasting it earlier. It's Chenin and it's Columbar, and it's fruity and it's linear and glacier, as we said. However, you do see it as a potential alternative to Sauvignon Blanc for those basically that want to take a break from the exuberant thiols, the exuberant, you know, pangy fruits of Sauvignon, and just go for something a bit more sort of fresh white wine. So I don't know, it has massive potential. I may have potentially hijacked your question and answer session, Reenen, because I know you were keen to take the floor and not only read out the question, but produce the answer. So are you in a position to do that from your computer?
I've actually got the Q&A thing here. So where should I start and who should I answer?
Mate, start at the beginning, and we'll go on now. We'll do it for it is we've sort of encroached on time, but let's do it for the next 5 to 7 minutes. So Can you scroll to the top? And
I'll start at the top. The first question is from a number and he asked, why have they banned alcohol in South Africa? And to be honest, we don't know exactly, but what they say is due to all the trauma-related cases that alcohol has, the hospitals are getting filled up, and there's no place for COVID patients. But so it's a big, obviously it's a big hot topic here in South Africa, because there's so many other things other than alcohol also that's not banned, that's obviously implemented in people getting into hospitals. But obviously the government has their way of thinking, and they're doing what they have to do. So and I don't have the inside scoop there. So, but that's what everybody, the ANC government of South Africa is telling us why they are banning alcohol.
Very good.
So, Reenen, there's a few questions about the plaster on your head. They want to know the story.
Okay, I'll tell you quickly. It relates to the delay in tonight's, the opening of tonight's show, and I apologize for that again. I was carrying a bottle of South African Shiraz, not yours, from Arco Larman. You'll know Arco, and who was in the South African COVID rescue case. And we've just been staying in touch, having a look at a few wines. I didn't put the cork properly back in the bottle, which is a great mistake. However, I needed to be somewhere, and I needed to taste that wine again later. Somewhere, you can't go anywhere. We're in lockdown. I was going to the bubble I'm in, my son's house, and stuck it in a bag. Also put my laptop in the bag. Anyway, the bottle leaked all over the car seat. Then I took everything out and was cleaning up, and turned to get whatever else was left in the car seat and clocked my head on the window of the car, and the car won. That's it. I fought the car and the car won. And yeah, I took a lay down. I was slightly concussed, and I may come across as slightly concussed this evening, but thank God we have Reenen here to run the Q&A. So back to you, Reenen.
Okay, now I'll go on. We're glad you're fine, Ray. We can't do this without you. Listen, the next one from John is, the conclusion is the best wine I've tasted. Thanks, John. Can you please describe the difference between conclusion and say cab? What's your interpretation as to what makes it worth trading up in price? Actually, a very good question. So I think what makes the conclusion a little better, it's a blend. So I think you get a different sense of place because it's a blend of a few vineyards, and I think you get almost a more craftsmanship to the wine, where we're trying to formulate something that we think is something premium for our consumers, but that still almost replicates Boschkloof as a wine farm. And yeah, and I think that's the difference, where the cab is single vineyard specific and on its own. So we're trading up in price poorly, where I think it's on a quality bracket and uniqueness, John. The next question is Hillary. How is the alcohol ban affecting exports? Really missing our South African holiday this year. So Hillary, strange enough, the first lockdown, exports was also closed for about 5 weeks. With no reason at all. That was quite a strange regulation for a country to make, because we can't sell alcohol even to countries that may sell alcohol. So luckily, Vinpro and the bodies that support the industry actually got that turned over, and now we can export again. But then again, most of the export countries that, especially Boschkloof sells to, our on-trade, that's also still not opening up as well as we hoped. So it's still that wheel is still turning very slowly. But hopefully that will turn, because I see there's a lot of attention going on to South African wine overseas, that most countries are trying their bit to buy South African wines and to help the industry. And hopefully that will make the difference between people keeping their jobs and wineries still existing.
Yeah, and Reenen, as I said, I made contact with you today and all of our South African winemakers, and we're just, there's a short-term pain, and then there's the long-term vision, and so we're just South Africa we love, and then we've been drinking, Arabella, we adore Arabella, and Carmen and Bruver and everyone, and so we're very much with you. Everyone's going through a pandemic, and there are economic effects for everyone, but when you're just thrown another unnecessary, unjustified, undiplomatic obstacle, that's where you sort of need to go, okay, we need to sort of like pay a bit more attention to these guys and carry them through. So anyway, angels, naked angels will be there for you economically and supportively. Cool.
Thanks so much, Ray. Then we've got a question from Pete. How does the heat of South Africa affect the different wines? That's actually one of the characteristics I think that makes South Africa quite special, is the almost blend between the old soils and the heat, as I previously mentioned to Ray when we spoke about the old world and the new world. Almost perception that South African wines can have. So the heat, it affects South Africa as a lot of the other warm weather countries does, where we get, I think our challenge is not getting ripeness. Our challenge is getting wines that's still fresh and it's got acid, and that's our biggest challenge with a lot of heat, is getting wines that's still fresh, that's still got like a liveliness to them. Because we get the more riper, bruised, yellow fruits, we get the fuller flavors, but we don't always get the the nice acidities and the freshness. So it's got pros and cons there.
Reenen, shall we do one more question and then wrap, only in the interest of people want to watch baking shows and dancing shows and other shows that involve bears and circus tents. So one more question and then we wrap. And then we're fortunate, we've got another winemaker session next week with Jock Harvey. So hit us with your last one there, Reenen, please. Okay.
So the last one is from Roger. What did you learn from your time in France? Sounds like home was a better experience. So it's actually, well, I didn't learn anything in France from a winemaking perspective, but they changed my whole philosophy and my view about how I feel about wine. And I think that was critical in my upbringing with wine, to be honest, Roger. So we drank wine with lunchtime in between work, at evenings for 5 months long, and we learned where wine should become part of your lifestyle and not just say a drink. And you can enjoy it with food and experience everything and talk about it and when it becomes part of your lifestyle, it's amazing how your viewpoint starts differing on what you're making. So that's an excellent question. Home was not a better experience. Home is probably a better experience, but I think France was critical in my transformation as a winemaker.
It's a very good question. I did a vintage in the South Rhone in Montagu, and yes, similar. You drink wine with lunch, and actually I did a ski season, and we drank wine with lunch, as in building the bar and stuff. But every once in a while, I drink red wine during the day on Sunday with lunch or another day, and you go, oh, I shouldn't really be doing it. There's a hesitancy to it, but you do it and you go, gosh, it's just total appreciation of the art and the culture and what it is about. And it's not abuse, and it's one glass, and it metabolizes them, and it's with food, and it's the right thing. And it's a wonderful thing to take into the day when you're with people in the bright sun and the people around you. So it's a wonderful thing to drink wine with lunch during the day. And actually we sort of need that thing, always in moderation, but in these days having a glass of wine, it's the kind of thing, if we were allowed to travel, you might be doing, okay, where it's January, well, you'd probably be smashing back beers. And what's the thing, what's that dirty shot they do in ski resorts? Anyway, we move on, but basically beer, wine, whether you're on a ski holiday or down in the south of France or in South Africa, having some of that bon vivant and culture and reintroduce, just allowing yourself that half-life of travel is very important these days, I think. Reenen, we'll wrap it up there. Buddy, it is a real pleasure to have you on this evening. It was a pleasure to bring you into Naked. I'm so happy you are, as I've said to many of the guys, you're one of the GOBs, the good old boys, one of the greatest guys in wine, the most friendliest and I don't know, smartest. And as we saw through the wines, the balance, the elegance going through the wines, it's great to have you in here and many years to come. And so what we will do in a week or two, there'll be an email go out to everybody. And we've talked about Montagu, the potential, the threat actually, but the wines are delicious. And if we get enough backing, well, Reenen, we'll be straight away in touch, and it'd be great to pick and secure some of those vineyards for long-term sustainability. Cool, man.
Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.
Lekker. See ya, bro. Thanks for joining.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.